Hey, welcome to my journey and to another Taste of Home Collab series. As you know, this is what me and Joan from Joan's Put on the Plate are doing once a month. We are picking a Taste of Home annual because we both collect them. A year, 1997 was this year, and a category or a chapter, whatever you want to call it. Main dishes is the one we picked this time. So we both have to go to that category and pick a recipe. I didn't pick this month. David did, because the one I picked, I said, hey, how's this sound? He goes, well, I don't know if that sounds good. I'm like, okay, here, I handed him the book. He was sitting over there. I handed him the book. I'm like, okay, you pick. This is the one he picked, the one that we did today. And you know what? It turned out good. I was surprised. I really wasn't sure. But it is beef short ribs with cornmeal dumplings. And it's nothing I've ever made before, ever. I've never made a beef short rib. And I've never made a cornmeal dumpling. Made plenty of regular flour dumplings, but never one with cornmeal. So I was game. Glad I did it. So I just might let him pick them from now on. Who knows? We shall see. So anyway, when you get through watching mine, be sure and go over and check out Joan, see what she's making. I'm sure she picked something delicious. And that will do it. We will just start cooking. The first thing we need to do is brown our short ribs. I have my heavy cast iron, my enamel coated cast iron, just use a nice heavy Dutch oven over here heating up. And while that heats up, I'm going to cut these. Now, there are what was called short ribs, but it was the long bone, and it was a long piece like this, but the recipe says it needs to be cut in 1-inch pieces. Well, I knew I couldn't cut through the bone, so I also saw this beef flanking style ribs. So I looked it up, and this is the same as a beef short rib. And if you can see, the bone goes that way, so we can cut right in between. So the recipe calls for 3 pounds, but I thought that was going to be too much for me and David. So I just went with, I don't know, I have about 1.5 pounds. So what I'm doing here is right in between the bone, I'm just cutting it, and that will be our 1-inch pieces. So I'm going to do that for all of them, and then our pot should be heated by then. Okay, we got them all cut up, and it feels like my pot is hot enough, so I'm just going to add a couple tablespoons of olive oil. Swirl that around a little bit. This is probably going to scream, but we need to brown them on both sides. Okay, we got the first batch browned. I'm going to just remove these to a plate and do the second half. Okay, now that these are brown, we will add our other ones back to it. I'm going to make sure they're all smooth. We need 1 large onion cut into wedges, and this is how I cut mine. I just cut it in half and then just dice it. That's what I'm calling a wedge. So we're dumping those in there, and 1 clove of minced garlic. Woo. And then we are going to just stir these around, breaking them up, and cook until the onions have started to get tender. Just stirring every little bit. Okay, the onions have started to soften up a little bit, so we will move on to our next step. Now, here's where I had to back up and punt. Recipe called for 28 ounces of diced tomatoes. Well, I forgot to buy them. So what I took was 2 cans of 14.5 ounce sliced stewed tomatoes, and I put them through my food processor. So that's what I'm using. So that is 28 ounces of sliced stewed tomatoes that I chopped up. Now we need a half a cup of beef broth. And this is what I used. I just used the Knorr. 1 teaspoon to 1 cup of water. We're only going to use half of it now. And we're going to save half for later. So let me pour in. Okay. And then we need a tablespoon of sugar. And 2 tablespoons of soy sauce. An 1/8 teaspoon of nutmeg. And then some salt and pepper. It gives an amount of salt and pepper, but I don't know if there's more in these stewed tomatoes than would have been in my diced tomatoes. And this is something you can always salt it at the table if need be. So let's just get this stirred around. While we're getting it stirred around, we want to bring it up to the boil. Which I think my stove is so hot, we're pretty much there. I'm going to go ahead and turn it down. Because what we want to do is just simmer it for 1.5 hours to 2 hours covered. So I will keep coming up here. Oh, there's David's phone. Okay. That phone, I tell you. I will keep coming up here and checking on it, but I'm going to set my timer for 1.5 hours. But it's 1.5 hours to 2 hours, or until this meat is tender. That's what we're going for. We're getting the short ribs tender. So we'll go ahead and cover that up and check on it shortly. So this has been simmering just like this for almost 2 hours. I checked it and the meat is tender. I had like maybe 10 minutes left to go. So I'm going to go ahead and start thickening it. The leftover beef broth that we had, you need to add 2 to 3 tablespoons of cornstarch. And I went ahead and added 3 because that's a lot of liquid. And we're going to pour that in and stir it, simmer it until it thickens. Okay, I'm going to leave this here and just let it keep simmering while we start our dumplings. So what we're going to do here, I already have 3/4 cup of water, 1/2 teaspoon salt, and 1/2 cup of cornmeal. This is just plain cornmeal. And we are going to stir it until it comes up to the ball. Okay, this has come up to the ball. We are going to cook it and stir it a minute or 2 until it thickens. Okay, it's not going to take a minute or 2. My stove is so hot that hardly took a minute, and I think that is thick enough. So let's slide over here. Okay, so here is our thickened up cornmeal. I have 1 egg that I have beaten up. We're going to add a little bit of this to the egg because we want to temper it. So we will just beat a little bit of the hot cornmeal into the egg because we don't want to scramble our egg when we pour it into the cornmeal. And we can pour it all back into the cornmeal and stir that around. Now what I have in this measuring cup is a half a cup of regular all-purpose flour and a teaspoon of baking powder. And we're going to add that next. We'll make a stiff dumpling dough. Okay, and then the next thing we need is 7-ounce can of corn. Well, I had a can of corn and I didn't want to buy a separate can, so I'm just using half of a regular full-size can of corn. I didn't measure it, I just eyeballed half. It's not been cooked or anything like that. Just straight out of the can, drained. Okay, now let's go over here and make our dumplings. Now I have my, I don't know what would you call this, a stew? I have it simmering. It's gotten really thick. And we are going to drop our dumplings by a tablespoon. Got one big one left. Now we are going to leave it simmering. Put the lid back on. And it says don't peek for 10 minutes. So that's what we're going to do. Okay, so the 10-minute timer went off and I looked. They're not even close to being done. They're still all wet. So I'm not going to stir them. I'm not going to mess with them. But I'm resetting the timer for an additional 5 minutes. And we'll see what that does, and then we'll go from there. If you can see, it says you're not supposed to lift the lid and 10 to 12 minutes until they test them. We can't test them if you don't lift the lid. That's what gets me about dumplings. But you can see that it's still completely doughy. So I'm just going to play with my dumplings here a minute. Some of these are looking like maybe they're done. Okay, these are a dense dumpling. That is a dense dumpling. This one is not done at all. So I'm going to give them another 5 minutes. Okay, we are going to look at this together because I'm kind of nervous. Okay, they're done. You know what they're like? I'm going to scoop some up. They feel like grits, which grits are corn, cornmeal's corn. So that's kind of, it feels like the texture of grits. So let's scoop some out and give this a taste. Well, what we have here is a tasty little dish. That meat, well, when I say it falls off the bone, look, there's one of the bones. It just fell off. So you have to watch when you eat. You can't just sit this down to a child a toddler and they know what to do. You'd have to take the meat off of the bones for them. But it's really good. And the dumplings, now they're not fluffy dumplings because it's made with cornmeal. And you've seen how we cooked the cornmeal first. We made cornmeal mush is what we did. And add some flour to it and corn. But they're good. They have good flavor. It's like a... well, I said they look like grits. They do. They have the texture of grits. The taste of cornmeal mush or polenta. Some of you call it polenta with corn in it. It's just really good. The tomato sauce in here is good. I'm not sure what that nutmeg was going to do to it, but it's good. I would have never picked this recipe, but I might let David do the picking from now on because he did good. Okay. Well, that is it. That is our beef short ribs and cornmeal dumplings. Be sure and go check out Joan's video to see what she made. And I hope you're enjoying this series because we're having a lot of fun doing it. And I will see you in my next video.